Adam Herhan. I'm making this video for you. I've never done this before, making a video specifically for someone shout them out like this, but I'm going to show you from the ground up how I run my sound system. I know my shit's cluttered. It's going to be a little confusing to keep track of. I might draw a little Microsoft Paint diagram. My setup's a bit more complicated than what you need to get into, but I'll show you how I do it. So first of all, my sound card actually has RCA jacks out on it. You do not need a sound card that has that. You could make your own adapter for the 3.5 mil, or you can probably get a thing at Five Below or something. But I wanted a really nice sound card that had an RCA jack, so I got one. I got this thing for 80 bucks, which it's like a $500 card, so pretty good deal to me. Okay, so my audio starts from here, and it goes out over here to a splitter that's under all this bullshit I didn't realize was on my desk. Okay, so these are my splitters, and that splits it to two channels. One goes to my mids and highs, the other goes to an EQ, which cuts out the highs for my amps that don't have crossovers and which aren't even hooked up anymore. Damn it. Not used to going back here. I used to actually have it where people could sit up and play games over here, but I kind of made this more towards sound. Okay, so yeah, that splitter you saw down there, one line goes off. This amp isn't hooked up, this EQ isn't hooked up yet because I have to adapt it to something I can actually use. So yeah, one line goes in there and then it goes back out, and that line that goes back out from that EQ goes down here, and then you see I've actually got it spliced to another cable to make it longer. It's actually soldered and stuff. I did it pretty legitly. So yeah, that's spliced over there. That runs through a bunch of cables here, another extender down there, and I did have it running this amp where I had the line in went into the CD, and then the line out went through tape 2 record out, and then that ran to this sundown amp I have here through my line in, and that has another line out if I wanted to chain it up anymore, but I didn't. So I got my bass knob hooked up here. Okay, over here I have a voltmeter. Just like $5 on Amazon, just rigged up to here to run at all times, and I have a switch over here, and what this switch does is it shorts the remote line to the positive line, because that's the same signal a car would send to turn your amp on. So when I want my amp to turn on, I short these two out. I got my ground here. These wires are way too thin for what I'm doing, but I can't pump enough power through them to melt the wires anyways. They get a little bit warm, that's it. Yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory, and wow, that seems kind of loose. I gotta tighten that. I'm gonna actually go tighten that now. By the way, this is an awful amp. Don't buy Pile. This amp is this amp's like, I'd say, if no distortion, it's like 15 watts, and with a reasonable amount of distortion, it's like 50. My dad's blasting music, so I'm gonna do the same. See, I just screwed that terminal back in. So yeah, my woofer has 2 coils that are 2 ohms. Wire it down, that makes 1 ohm. So I have it hooked up to here as 2 2-ohm channels, which in this amp does go straight to 1 ohm, because these 2 channels are linked. So if you're hooking up your own audio setup, you got to get that ohm load right. If you have it too high, you're not going to get much power, and if you have it too low, you're going to burn your amp up, or maybe even get a distortion and burn your sub up. Also, you got to keep an eye on your voltage. Like if mine was dipping a bit low there. I generally don't like it going below 11.5, so I got to turn my gain down a bit. Yeah, close enough. I hit 11.2 in that low. Okay, so yeah, then that goes to my sub, which is in my box. It's an okay box. Way too small. The cubes are wrong. I had to extend the port. I did put a 45 in here to help it out, but I actually extended this box because my tuning was off. Ow! Damn it. Okay. Oh yeah, so now I gotta show the mids and highs, how they go through. So after the splitter, they go through around, and then it goes to, let me check here. Is it here? Nope. Nope. Okay, so they go to the out, apparently. What? My mids and highs go to tape VCR out on this amp. This boombox used to be connected up over here, but now it's not. And What the fuck? Wait, I'm confused on my own setup. Hold up. Oh, actually, I know what's going on here. This was for my extra. I used to have rear speakers back there, and that's what this was for. I don't have those anymore. I got mad and destroyed them. Yeah, and then I got so yeah, there's 4 channels back here, and I need to get crossovers on these. I don't have any on them. But yeah, for my mid bass, I got these Fisher 15s, and my highs, like these are 8 ohms, and these are also 8 ohms. I got these concert monitors. I did my little custom refoam. Those were from blown out subs from the side of the road. That's pretty much the whole setup. It's pretty fucking loud too. Oh yeah, actually, I almost forgot the most important part. So, how I power this amp. You can use a computer power supply for low wattage stuff. You can get a like a 100 amp car battery charger, which I would really recommend that. It's honestly better than what I'm doing now, but I was scrapping, so I got these 2 car batteries, and this one runs kind of low, so I don't have it hooked up right now, but I got this car battery connected to this charger, and I run this charger to low amperage mode just to top this battery off. But yeah, my positive and negative of my amp are actually running off of this battery. And this charger is topping them off. It's a 50 amp charger, and I think it's running in 10 amp mode right now. Apparently this isn't the first time I had to explain this. I looked at my sketchbook and I was going to draw something, and this is my audio setup a while back before I got my new sound card. So that's how I used to do it. My sound card had 2 line outs, so the splitter would actually be where the sound card's at here. But yeah, see, you got the bass going off to the EQ, then the EQ goes out to this amp, this went out, which isn't there anymore, and then that went out to the sundown amp, and then this went up to the highs, and the EQ wasn't here yet. Or no, yeah, there's the other EQ, but yeah, that goes to this amp, which I was split out and went to that other amp. See, that's how you get all that shit hooked up at once. But yeah, if you let that amp do amount of distortion I'm not comfortable with, it probably does like 600 watts. But it sounds kind of nasty. I'm not a big fan of it. I like clean. If you're using a power supply to run your amp and you're not sure of the polarity, or you're doing something like this, you want to make sure that you are sure of the polarity before you're done. So I'm going to put my positive here on my positive lead. I don't have the ground screwed into the amp yet. So I got my positive here and my negative. Ah, fuck, that shocked me. I was standing. You won't get shocked, it's just because I have a power problem. If I touch the ground surface on the floor, I get shocked. There's something fucked up with the wiring in my house. 12.5 volts, polarity is correct. Wait, yes. Now, see, if I stand here, off the carpet, and I touch both these, I'm not getting shocked. But if I step on the carpet, I get shocked a little. And bad wiring in the house. Okay, so I'm gonna use my PSP as a test subject here, but when you're hooking up your sound system, like, you know, you got your line out from your computer, you're gonna want to split that. This will go to your mids and highs, then this will go to your lows, and if you're using a car amp, because that's what I'm showing this for, you're gonna want to convert that to be RCA. Which I made this myself. I actually pulled this out of a dead stereo system in a car and spliced it together. So yeah, then you connect that up to your RCA jacks. And polarity doesn't matter because the subs aren't polarized. You just gotta have them both there. You don't have to use actual car audio RCA jacks. You can just use any fucking one you have around the house. It does the same thing. Get it from point A to B, point A to B. So you got your gain control. You gotta play with that. You gotta listen for it, make sure it sounds right. And you got your crossover, which if you're running a sub, you definitely want your crossover on, and then you have to pick the frequency. Myself, I usually keep my crossovers close to 60. Like around there, because I like that lows. But if you only got one sub, you might want to have it closer to 100. I wouldn't really set it above 120 because your sub works harder, and if you had that double octave bass, it don't sound too good. But yeah, basically, once you got the amp running, it's crossover and gain. That's all you really have to play with. And this amp's intended to be used for mids and highs more than a sub, so that's why it has the ability to turn a crossover off. A lot of sub amps, the crossover is always on. So yeah, I've got my positive and negative here. I use my yellow as positive, and that the battery terminal from positive or whatever, I have it. I made one wire extra long and I jumped it over, so when this amp's getting power, it's always on, and that's running to the positive and negative of the VGA pin out in this power supply, because, well, showing a car battery would be too simple. And if you want your power supply to run without a computer, this one's all black, so I had to get this power supply next to it to compare it. But you take any of your grounds, which all your blacks are grounds, you take any of your grounds and you jump it to this green line, which you can shove a wire in there, or you could splice them if this is permanent. But yeah, you jump any ground to green, and that forces it on, because that acts as the power supply's remote line. And when you're looking to hooking this up to here, your amp's built to run in 14.4 volts, but car batteries run on 12 volts, so it will accept 12 volts, and it'll probably work as low as 10, but I wouldn't recommend going down that low. That's where most amps start shutting off. And the wattage rating will be much lower. But yellow is positive 12 volts, black is ground, and that will always be the case. And if they don't got it, you can look up the pin out of the connector. Like the graphics card 8-pin Molex or whatever, they only have ground and 12 volts, but the 8-pin has like 5 grounds and 3 12s, so you definitely need to know the pin out before doing it. And you want to the more wattage you're pushing, if you on a power supply, you need to break it out over more and more wires. This amp's rated for like 300 peak or something like that. Maybe it's RMS, but it's probably peak. And so it's probably like, what, 150 watts? And it's meant to build a graphics card that uses 300 watts would use 2 of these cables. So I don't know, I think it's kind of fair. And I'm pretty sure most of these grounds are in 12s. I'm pretty sure it has one 12 volt line that breaks apart the mini inside here. So, but basically you want to make sure you have your wires spread out so they don't heat up and melt under a load. So the more wattage you're pushing, the more wires. And these wires are kind of thin, but this is not going to be a problem because I'm not pushing much power. Another thing is, you got to get the ohm load right in your sub. So this is a dual 2 ohm. Each coil is 2 ohms. And this amp holds a maximum of 2 ohms. Most do 1. This is a 2 ohm amplifier. And it's only 2 ohmed in bridge mode, so I have it, which most amps that are monoblocks, if you hook them up like that, it doesn't really matter. But if you use one positive and one negative, because they normally are linked like that. But yeah, so this amp is a 2 ohm stereo amplifier instead of a monoblock. And but yeah, so this is 2 ohms, this is 2 ohms, 1 coil. Now if I were to hook these up in series, like if I were to put this wire in here, pull this out, and put this wire over here, that is now 4 ohm. Meanwhile, if I were to take these 2 wires here, and if I were to jump this ground to this ground and jump that positive to this positive, or just run both positive and negatives straight to the terminals in the amp, that puts it down at 1 ohm, which if the amp could take that, that's what most amps do, that'd be great, but this amp doesn't. So we're just going to run 1 coil, and the RMS wattage is about thermal output. So realistically, if you're running 1 coil or 2 coil, you're going to either way, you're still going to have the same power limit. So a 500 watt sub is going to be a 500 watt sub on 1 coil or 2 coil. There might be a small difference, but not much. One of the only downside is the magnetic fields kind of strengthen each other, so it'll be more efficient with both coils running, but you're better off having your ohm load as close to what you need it to be as possible. But yeah, this sub is a dual 4 ohm, so if I were to hook both these wires up to here, positive, positive, negative, negative, this little JL would be perfect for this amp, except for this amp is really weak for that sub. You can really overpower that sub because that's a JL. Okay, so enough bullshitting and talking and explaining. We're gonna do this. Yeah, I got my wire jumping down here. If I flip the switch in the back, this will turn on. So I'm going to turn this up all the way, and I'm going to turn my gain down all the way. Alright, we're going to do a power up test. Yep, okay, we have power. Amp is on. Alright, now let's go find, I actually have a folder of really bassy music I played so we could be bassy. Now, we're going to play some decaf, because decaf. Alright, skip ahead because decaf has slow intros. Alright, I hear it going. That's distortion. I think. I hope that's distortion. Yeah, we're losing power. Too much, pushing the amp too hard. Gotta turn that down. This is a really weak amp. Now, a lot of amps, you can push them past their limits that they're rated for, but the problem is your amp's it's probably gonna distort easier, it's gonna consume more power than it's rated for, and that's the problem because it's gonna blow itself out eventually. Your amp's gonna be very short-lived if you do that, but it might not. But I wouldn't recommend going below your rated ohm rating. If you do it a little bit, like some people got like 0.8 ohms, but I would not do like half ohm on a 1 ohm amp or do 1 ohm on a 2 ohm amp. And if you do it, you at least want to have the gain cut back, because if the amp's going to put more power through than it's rated, it's going to overheat, the parts are going to burn out. But yeah, if you can do that, all you got to do is just split that to a boom box or something, and you've got yourself a basic sound system started up. That's all it took. You can replace this 12 volt with anything 12 volt, as long as it supplies you to current. You can do this really cheap. I mean, I just threw this together out of scrap stuff. Well, I actually pulled this out of one of my computers, but I could have ran it off here. This amp is so weak that I probably could have ran it off here. Also, I don't buy this. This isn't actually what it looks like. Oh shit, I forgot the bass. But yeah, this is picked out of my backyard, just experiment. I brewed this stuff myself. I actually picked it yesterday, and I baked it in the oven so it would get crispy, and I could, I threw the whole damn sticks in a pot of water on the stove and boiled it till it was dark green. I'm gonna give one more helpful tip of the day. So if you got an amp and you can't figure out the RMS wattage of it, it's like not listed. The company won't let you know. They just only tell you the peak value, or you can't even find that, and you want a general idea what your RMS wattage is going to be like. Well, you can, there is a way to know that a line it will never cross without being damaged or pushed over hard. And you take your fuses. So voltage times amperage equals wattage. These amps are rated to run at 14.4 volts. So you take it's 25 amp fuse, that's 25 times 14.4, and that is, this amp has an absolute maximum power of 360 watts. Its rating's actually legitimate. Holy shit. Huh. How about that? Because they wouldn't put the fuse that much higher than what the rating of what the amp would be, because there'd be, you know, inefficiencies in the amp. But if it's pulling more power than it should, the fuse is there to protect the amp. So my Sundown amp is rated for 150 amp fuse, and it's like, I know it's supposed to bench around 1600 watts, even though it's rated for 1500. But let's do 150 times 14.4. Yeah, okay, that fuse is quite a bit above the rating, so. But they expect you to overdrive this amp a bit and shit. That's what Sundown does. Okay, so let's see, what else do we got going on? My brain. I'm running on very little sleep. Oh yeah, so when you, if you're running on 12 volts, that actually lessens the maximum potential for your amp. So my amp is 1500 watts at 14.4 volts. I mean, it actually does more than that, but we'll just say it is. So we got 1500 divided by 14.4, that's 104 amps. So we do 104 times 12, and this is what you'd get off of a battery if your voltage never dropped. That's 1200 watts out of 1500. That is a significant drop. Now say you're pushing it really low to 10, which I would never recommend going down that low, but just to say you are, and look, now you're only pushing 1000 watts. You lose a lot of power by losing voltage, and you can gain power by gaining voltage, but I wouldn't recommend it unless the amp's built for it. And part of why my amp probably has such a high fuse rating is my amp is 16 volt stable, so it can run on a 16 volt system where the batteries are actually 14 volts and the alternator 16.